Welcome to the Fantasy Formula 1 podcast, where we use fake money to buy real F1 teams to win imaginary points.
Dude.
Man, I'm back at it. Maybe this whole just audio thing only could work.
No,
At
that
least I'll
could
remember.
be. I think this is the dysfunctional principle that if you say it fast enough, it comes out clearly. It's like when you're playing music, you're like, oh, I can do this if I do it fast. But if you can't do it slow, can you really do it? No, and the answer is no. Been going through that with my 10-year-old, and she hates practicing piano right now. So
There we go.
So it's near and dear to my
heart. If you
heart.
just slam the keys around, then it sounds pretty close, right?
Oh yeah.
Just in the, and my 1.5-year-old daughter, she's getting to the point where she can stand, and if she doesn't think about it, she doesn't realize she doesn't know how to stand.
Oh sure.
And she'll walk a couple steps and then be like, wait, I don't know how to do this, then topple over and be like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, no, it's like this. It's the sports psychology of toddlers. Right. It's like getting into your own head and you don't even know it.
Right.
But,
Well, we are here to talk about all things that happened at the Singapore Grand Prix.
Yeah.
For Fantasy Formula 1, which there's plenty. I don't mean to sound so distraught about that. A lot of it's same song, different verse. If you watch the Singapore Grand Prix,
sure,
it's, oh, wow, gee whiz, pretty much the same thing. All the front three separated by 20 seconds each or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It was a very telling race, but it didn't tell us anything we didn't already know.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of the fun of this race was talking about. Primarily, is this the swan song for any number of a couple of drivers here?
Yeah.
Not the least of which is our own hometown, not hometown favorite, but kind of
really hometown. I love the dude.
Let's say podcast hometown favorite, Danny Ricciardo.
Yeah, Danny Rick,
it's one of those
man.
guys where it's like, yeah, he's past his prime, but you can't not love the dude, right?
Like, so he bounced around. He drove for McLaren. He drove for Red Bull. He drove. There's another team in there I'm missing. That
Renault.
Renault. He drove for Renault, and then he lost his seat. And then Christian Horner loved him, and he through charisma and of course driving chops. He's won 8 Grand Prix. I think that was the number they were throwing out. He worked his way into the reserve driver for Red Bull.
Yeah,
and
then, he paid his dues, did all the PR stuff for a while. Flew the team player flag for a while, and and I think if I remember last season of Drive to Survive, they did roll out a Red Bull car for him to do some trials, just to like, hey, if you were in the Red Bull car, could you perform? And he could.
Yeah, because they know how well that car did on the tracks in the past, like when Max Verstappen would take XYZ car and race it on this track, how fast he could do it.
Yeah.
So as soon as you take this guy and put it in the track, you can see basically how well he matched up against Max Verstappen or whoever else. So,
but to have him, in this race here, he's trying his best. He's trying to make it happen. He gets fastest lap, gets of course gets driver of the day because people are pulling for him, but still ends up P18.
The cruddy part is that this guy's won, like I said, 8 Grand Prix. He's been, almost 200 races or over 200 races. And the reason why he's going to lose his seat is because of somebody else's contract. Right?
Sure.
So the current reserve driver, how come I can't remember his name right now?
Liam Lawson.
So Liam Lawson, I guess, has it in his contract that unless he knows where he's going next season by, I guess, the next race, he becomes a free agent.
Right. And again, he's a little bit more of a known quantity than any number of other rookies, just because when he did come in for a couple of races, he did well.
He did great.
And it wasn't, he did well in a Ferrari or he did well in a Red Bull. No, he did well when he was flying the baby RB V-carb flag.
Yeah.
So Ollie Behrman got the benefit of the doubt, like, he got P7 in his first race, but it was in a Ferrari. Again, don't jump down my throat. He has since proven that the guy, the kid can still drive, because I think he got P11, was it P11 or P12?
Just points.
in a Haas car, which again is a good sign for the future for Haas, because he is currently the only one signed to Haas for next year.
I would need to check the dramas, but I think so.
Gotcha.
I know. No, I think they have to have. Maybe they have both drivers. I know. I don't know. I don't want to say anything and be wrong.
No, they've got Behrman for next year, but Hülkenberg is going to.
That's it.
Is going to kick Sauber, which will become Audi.
Yep, and then Magnussen's lost his seat. I don't think Magnussen's going anywhere yet. Yeah,
and that would be, I think, our other speculative driver here, Kevin Magnussen. He's amassed so many penalties this year that he was actually banned from the previous race. He comes back and then DNFs this time around.
And this is, and I don't mean to interrupt, but this is one of the killer parts about fantasy F1 versus regular F1. For anybody out there uninitiated, if you do not finish a race, you DNF a race, you get negative 20 points.
Yeah.
In real F1 world, just like what happened with Kevin Magnussen, there he is 4 or 5 laps from the end of the race and he gets a flat tire, or they call it a puncture. We in the States would call it a flat tire. So they have to pull him into the pits to change his tire.
Yep.
The whole field passes him. And they're like, all right, well, we're not going to have you go back out to get dead last. That's embarrassing. Just retire the car.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, it's same. It doesn't matter. For us, it gives us negative 20 points, and he loses all the points he had. It was just, It was ridiculous. He's like, no, come on, man.
That's the dichotomy of fantasy sports versus the the standard competition itself. If you want to enjoy fantasy sports, you also have to make sure that it doesn't impede on the integrity of the competition itself. True. It's the same thing we run into with football or baseball. All of a sudden, those week 16 games of the two teams that are mathematically both out of playoff contention, you still care about them because of fantasy. That's that's great. However, the sport can't care about fantasy, and so that's where it's. I care about all 10 teams because of Fantasy F1.
Yep.
That's fantastic. However, on days like this, when you might have Kevin Magnussen, at a discount, he's not amassing you a couple of points. He's now costing you 20.
Yeah.
And it's for nonsense reasons. It's not a lack of merit on Kevin Magnussen's part. He picked up. You told me he picked up a puncture 4 or 5 laps before the end. That sucks and it hurts us. But it's not one of those Kevin Magnussen being a reckless Dane. I can say that because I'm part Danish. I got the Viking tattoo to prove it. But anyway, it's always a little heartbreaking when that happens, and it does make you wonder at this point where we're 6 races from the end of the season. Kevin he had a couple years off and he got brought back in because of his experience, and I think that has paid off, but I don't know that it's been enough to keep him on the grid for next year.
No, I doubt it, and especially if they're getting rid of Danny Rick, then I don't see Kevin Magnussen. I mean, they both have good experience, but no one's pushing for.
Sure.
I
think there's too much young talent just chomping at the bit that you can't ignore. And again, your shelf life, I think the average decent career. Actually, no, I'm going to get that completely wrong. I think the average age in F1, and it's skewed by guys like Alonso who hang around and can still hang with everybody. The average age is 26 years old.
Good grief.
And so, that doesn't speak to career longevity unless you are a freak of nature.
Well, yeah, because as soon as you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Look how good I am. I'm constantly getting just outside the points. I've been driving for a long time. Like, you got to have something else pulling for you, because otherwise you're going to have people like, Behrman and Colapinto? Colapinto and Behrman, these guys show up and they don't do bad. Like, Colapinto climbs into a Williams and gets points his first, or he gets almost in the points his first race, and Behrman gets in the points in a
I think Colapinto with Williams did get it was 10th, but still
and then you look at our countryman Logan Sargent, who I've had on my F1 teams all year
because he's cheap,
because he's cheap, and guess what, he's an American, so I'll pull for it, but also he's cheap and it works, and he didn't cost me too many points compared to last year,
and so and then on top of that you do have Liam Lawson, who did prove himself last year, and he's been sitting on the sideline in the meantime waiting for his shot. So I think seeing guys like Colapinto, seeing guys like Behrman step in, and now everyone's talking about them instead of him, even though he didn't do anything wrong, he just hasn't gotten a chance to be back in the seat. I can totally see the frustration mounting for him. So
for sure.
So in that vein, it is his time. I think Danny Rick he's had highs, he's had lows. He's tried to advocate for himself, and he's certainly gotten paid well.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it hasn't been the storybook career for him.
And the reason why I don't like all the certain websites who we won't talk about on social media is like, oh, breaking news, we think Danny Ricciardo might be out of a seat next year. Breaking news, he might. Man,
I hate that.
Kills me. I don't want to unfollow because I do get some good information.
So many Instagram accounts though. It's all breaking news, and then it's this purely speculative crap.
Yeah.
I hate it. Yeah.
I watched some of the coverage and replays and stuff on F1.com, and I truly think that this is Danny Rick's last race because he didn't get out of his seat.
Yeah. No,
stopped. If you guys watch, he stopped and he just kind of stayed in there with his hands on the wheel Everyone else was getting out, like their cars around him, and he just sat there. And then when they asked him about it in the interview, he got choked up. And he's like, "Man, I love being in the cockpit. It's just a good place." And I'm just like, "Holy crap, this guy knows." Like I've talked to people who, including the guy in the mirror, who are like, your career's ending, your career's changing, life from this point on will not be the same.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw in him. So it's
no, for sure. Yeah. This was definitely the end of an era.
And if not, I'll be happily surprised.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And again, the dude's more charismatic than any 5 other drivers on the grid.
Completely agree.
So I think he's definitely got some kind of broadcasting or commentary career after this. I mean, he's going to be part of F1 for a long time.
If the and again, this isn't a dig on him, but if the former team principal of Haas can land a job putting microphones in front of people. He did the
that's right.
interviews.
Yeah,
what's his name? How come I can't? It's late. Sorry, we're recording this really late, and I need to get more caffeine in me. But he's sitting there putting a microphone in front of people. So Danny Rick he can do pretty much. I think he should.
Let's back up and provide some context here. Normally, you're catching us mid-morning.
That's true.
Each on our second to third cup of coffee. Right now, life is getting a little bit in the way, so we're going lo-fi. We're actually in my living room around 10 o'clock at night. And that's what the clink of the glass is. I'm enjoying an 11-year Lagavulin, the Nick Offerman edition. And
there we go.
Anyway. So it's a different flavor tonight.
It is,
but I'm blanking on his name right now too. It's the former Haas guy. He was just so miserable.
I'll remember. We'll move on to the topics. I'll remember before the night's out. But anyway, so I think Danny Rick can do a really good job anywhere he goes. But we'll miss him, and I'll miss having him on my F1 team because I need to replace him with somebody else if they oust him.
Well, yeah. So let's talk strategy here. Like we have another dominant Norris victory.
Yes.
We have Max Verstappen picking up a solid second. There was a huge spread on the first 3 to 5 finishers there. It was I think Max Verstappen was 20 plus seconds behind Daniel Norris.
Yep.
Daniel Norris? Lando Norris. Who's Daniel Norris?
Ricciardo. That's who we were just talking about.
Oh, my gosh.
For the whole time.
Okay, it's late. We're tired.
But yes, Lando Norris finished, and then, no kidding, he did. He won. And then Max Verstappen finished 20 seconds behind him. And then Oscar Piastri, 40 seconds.
So a huge spread there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, though.
20 seconds. Sorry, I can't read the timing clock. Verstappen's plus 20 seconds. Piastri's plus 41 seconds. Russell's plus 61 seconds. And then everybody else kind of bunched up for a second.
Right,
but they're all 20 seconds apart from
my big takeaway there is Norris still has by far the better car, but Max Verstappen is still Max Verstappen.
He is.
They've been having upgrade issues, and they've been repeatedly identifying a lot of mechanical issues with the Red Bull car in terms of keeping up with the rest of the pack these days. But to get a solid second place, at this point, is kind of a victory, and at this point, McLaren has eclipsed Red Bull as for the constructors championship, just because if Oscar Piastri is not winning, he's only 2 or 3 spots behind Lando, whereas
Perez got 10th.
What's that?
Perez got 10th,
and that's exactly it. Whereas you have Max Verstappen getting 2nd or 3rd, and Perez in 10th or worse. So at this point, this is McLaren's year.
Yep.
The question is can Max keep it close enough to maintain that drivers' championship?
And that's a good point. Like a lot of the talking heads on F1 stuff, no one's sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, I wonder if Red Bull will be able to get the constructors' championship."
Yeah.
No,
I think
they're done. Like there's not enough. It's 1v2.
It's mathematically possible. But if the first 70% of the season is any indication, it's not going to happen. Even if Max wins out.
And so, what about Max versus Lando? I don't think I would like to see it, but also I remember I was rooting for Max Verstappen back when he was trying to win his first championship against, Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm proud to say I've been a Max Verstappen fan since before it was cool. But the thing is, like, I think Max is good enough. I don't think Lando Norris has enough time and enough races. I think if we had another 20 races from here, I think Lando would overtake him. But we're going to have 6 left.
I gotcha.
I think Max has such a points lead that Lando would need to win. Max would need to get another DNF.
Does he still have so much of a points lead? Let me.
I mean, let's. I don't know.
So, like I said, we are lo-fi today. Let me.
Yeah, we're looking up on our phones, sitting here on the couch. While you're looking that up, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics.
Do it.
Mercedes versus Ferrari. So more than anything, anybody who's heard me talk about this, you have your two constructors on your fantasy F1 team. You have to go with McLaren. That's just where the points are. Well, then do you go Ferrari or do you go Mercedes? This week, Mercedes ended up coming out with more points. However, the reason they did was because Charles Leclerc crashed in qualifying, backed it up, and he qualified. Where did he qualify? He qualified 10th, and he finished 5th. Where if he had stayed on course and qualified first, second, third, he probably would have just taken off. So the only reason I think Mercedes did better than Ferrari this week was because one of the Ferraris didn't qualify well. Now, that being said, that's the whole point of the race.
Sure.
So the point is with all this, before we go back to what we were talking about before, is that when it comes to I want my McLaren, and then do I go Ferrari or Mercedes? It still is up in the air as anything. This week was Mercedes week. Last week, I think, was Ferrari's week. They're taking the points away from each other. So one of the teams is the best constructor to have aside from McLaren. Which one? There's nothing. It's just where do you want to gamble?
Sure. So, I have my druthers on I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah.
Within that though, if I'm going Ferrari, I'm going Charles Leclerc all day.
Oh, for sure.
If I'm going Mercedes on a given day, or if the winds are out of the east that day, I mean, whatever superstition tilts your decision making. And you go Mercedes that day, I'd go George Russell just because he's just that much more affordable, but his performance has been equivalent, if not stronger than Lewis Hamilton's this year.
And point in case, this last race in Singapore, he finished 4th, Hamilton finished 6th, and Hamilton qualified 3rd, Russell qualified 4th.
Oh.
So Russell qualified 4th, finished
maintained 4th.
Maintained 4th. Hamilton qualified 3rd, finished 6th. So he lost a couple points there.
Yeah.
So, he's a few million less, and he's consistent. So, definitely Russell.
And I have to go ahead and concede to you here. Drivers' championship-wise, Max. So this is non-fantasy. Max still sits. What's that?
This is real world.
This is real Formula One fake points. Max Verstappen has 331 points on the season because again, the first half of the season it was the Max show.
It was the Max show. It
was,
and McLaren wasn't even on the board.
They were,
but they were.
But at the time it was, I think the first 3 months, if you've been hanging with us, was Red Bull. Mm-hmm. Quietly, Ferrari is the clear number 2,
and then I didn't believe in him. But
and then it was the battle for 3rd with McLaren or Mercedes.
Yes, right. It was.
And over the weeks, it has become a conversation of no. Mercedes is no longer 2 years behind, and McLaren is legit. And in fact, both are more reliable than Ferrari.
Yeah.
And since then, it has become, now it's definitely McLaren. And what do you think about Red Bull or Ferrari on any given? I'm sorry. Mercedes or Ferrari on any given day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that, Max Verstappen, clear leader for 331 points. He put the work in early, got those dominant wins early. Lando Norris is a clear second though. He's got 279 points. So there's still a 52 point spread there.
So 50 divided by 6. What is that? It's like 8. 6 times, I don't know, 5 times 8. Yeah.
It's close enough. Yeah.
8 or 9 points.
Yeah.
You need per race, which is.
It's not.
He needs to win, and Max needs like 3rd or 4th.
As long as Max doesn't do those P5, P7 performances like we've seen probably a few times over the last month.
Yeah.
As long as he is right behind Lando, Lando's not going to be able to catch him on the points.
Where are we at with the Constructors' Championship?
See, on the Constructors, here's where it's interesting is Max is number 1, Lando is number 2, Oscar's number 4, whereas Perez is number 8. So 1 and 8 versus 2 and 4. But so constructors-wise, McLaren has 516 points. Yeah. Red Bull has 475. And given, I think, how much more dominant that McLaren car is now, I think that's going to be awfully hard to catch. in the remainder of the season. As long as Lando and Oscar are doing what they're doing, they're going to be untouchable for the remainder of the season.
Yeah.
So it goes McLaren 516 points, Red Bull Racing 475, Ferrari 441.
Ooh.
And Ferrari doesn't suck. They're not as consistent as we would like, but they're 34 because math, 34 points behind, and there's
behind Red Bull.
Behind Red Bull, yeah. Then it drops off to Mercedes at 329, just because Mercedes was rough earlier on this year.
They're really rough, and they're doing well, but all
they're doing well now. But Ferrari could take him. And by them I mean Red Bull. So that's interesting.
They could. That would be sick. Can you imagine if Max Verstappen wins the drivers' championship and Red Bull gets P3 in the constructors?
I mean, you can't keep Perez at that point,
no,
right?
I don't.
That speaks to such an ugly disparity that, again, we're also only really seeing in Aston Martin between Alonso and Stroll.
Yeah, and you can't really. I almost have to put Aston Martin as an outlier because literally it's basically a dictatorship where the leader's like, I want this legend, former champion, to drive with my boy in Formula One.
Right, but and to those who would say, well, maybe it's not that far off, because right now Fernando is in P9 for the drivers' championship, and Lance Stroll is 11th. However, when you're getting down that far on the list, Fernando Alonso has 62 points. Lance Stroll has 24. That's pretty rough.
Yeah. Oh man. So it's pretty clear. So what can we derive from this from a fantasy perspective? What can we derive?
So I think that the common theme we're talking about here is the strength of your combined drivers.
Yeah.
And so this conversation really only applies to when you pick your constructors. You want tight groupings if possible. One superstar driver can carry a constructor, and there's certainly an argument to be made for having a top tier driver and his constructor, so you can double dip a little bit. But you really got to pay attention to that number two driver. How far off from that premier driver is he? Because that will matter. McLaren is not much cheaper, but is cheaper than Red Bull, and they're winning the constructors championship right now.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can't afford Lando and Norris. You can afford Oscar Piastri and McLaren, and you're going to do just fine.
Yeah.
And then you just have that conversation about, how do I feel about Ferrari or Mercedes today? And you'll get lucky sometimes. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, this could have gone better. George Russell winning and then getting disqualified. But but that's where this conversation matters. Is what is the gap between your two drivers when you're picking a constructor?
Yeah, because as soon as you have somebody who gets P1 and P3, it's really hard to get more points than that for your constructor. Like, got it. And then you had, both Ferraris get 5 and 7, and both Mercedes get 4 and 6. That's good points.
Sure.
And yes, as soon as you're going up against, you get P4 and P6, and then somebody else in the other team gets P1 or P2 and 15th. Yeah, because with multiple drivers, the more you pass, you get points.
Yep.
The higher you finish in the field, you get points. So no, that's a very good point.
Thank you. So hey, how'd you do this week as far as your fantasy teams for Singapore?
I actually did very, very well.
Good.
I'm pretty stoked because I went heavy McLaren and then heavy Mercedes with a little bit of Ferrari in there.
Sure. Okay.
But let's go ahead and take a look. So for my main three teams, I got 241 points, 219 points, and 216 points. I would have gotten more than that 219 points, but I had Alex Albon, who got a DNF'd, and that was rough. So, and if I go into leagues, and this is the part that I'm really happy about, if I go into check my overall league standing, one of my teams is number 18,000 in the world, which is healthily inside the top 1%. So
nice, dude.
I'm pretty happy. I think you're knocking on the door, if not there as well. So
yeah,
how'd you do this week? I can go team by team.
I didn't do nearly as well as I had in Azerbaijan, but here's why, and it's weird. My best team got only 206 points. Again, I can't complain about a 206 point performance, but what was interesting was this is my team that has Mercedes and McLaren as my constructors, but I don't have a McLaren driver. I have Charles Leclerc, and I 2x'd him, so he only got that only got me 42 points, and then my other good driver was George Russell. Otherwise, I have Kik Saber and Franco Colapinto because that's what I can afford after that build. So gotcha. Again, given that my best driver still only got P4. P4?
Yeah. And you got P4, P5, and then you got 206 points without a McLaren driver.
Correct.
That's impressive.
I mean, it's a weird brag, well,
but it works. Because if you can get over 200 points, that's huge.
Sure. So what's interesting though, next team, I went more Mercedes heavy, but this is. So here's the conversation we were just having about the strength of the two drivers in a constructor. So my next team, I got 183 points.
Okay.
I have Oscar Piastri, and I 2x'd him, so he got me 52 points. And then I have a Ferrari driver, Carlos Sainz, 18 points. But my constructors are Ferrari and Mercedes. I didn't have McLaren. If I had McLaren as a constructor, that would have been my top performing team. I would have gotten 220 or 230 points right out of that easy. So this is where that does matter. I've got two decent constructors, but I ditched the high dollar McLaren constructor, and that is the constructor you want to have. They are this year's. You have to have them at this point in the season.
They really are, because I went the team I had that did well. I kept Lando Norris and I kept McLaren. Lando Norris doubled, got me 70 points. McLaren got me 81.
Yeah.
So just right there, that's 150 points ish, just in those two people. Then I had Mercedes, and then I had Danny Rick, who got me 23 points. Man, okay, but. Yeah, I agree. It's really the point. You have to have McLaren. You have to have at least one McLaren driver. Yeah.
But and then Danny Rick, he got you 23 points because he got fastest lap and driver of the day.
And actually, I need to check that out. So I think most of that came from driver of the day, because in real world F1, you only get the points you only get the championship point for having the fastest lap if you finish in the top 10.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of controversy if we want to start talking about that. So Danny Rick is like P18.
Yeah.
They go ahead and pit him, give him fresh tires, space him out, and have him do the fastest lap, even though he's not getting any points from it.
Sure.
To take it away from Lando Norris, who up until then had the fastest lap. So Danny Rick still got the fastest lap, just he doesn't earn any points.
Right.
But Lando Norris no longer has a fastest lap, so he loses that he doesn't earn that championship point.
I see.
But so then the controversy is, well, would he have done that if Max Verstappen had the fastest? Because on one side of it, Danny Rick's like, no, this might be my swan song in F1.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it all I got.
I'm gonna give it all I got, and guess what? Give me some new boots. Let me go get the fastest lap of my last race. Let me just go do
yeah.
I'd do it. The points can go hang themselves. I want my fastest lap.
But the controversy and the question is are there really 10 independent teams, or is VCARB Red Bulls? Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So, I think it's slightly negligible at this point.
Well, it's negligible unless Max Verstappen wins by 1 point.
That's true.
But there's been plenty of times that McLaren's been taking points from each other, like the drivers do. So as soon as they lose by 1 point, they only have themselves to blame.
Yeah.
But
I also fully believe. If I'm putting myself in Danny Ricciardo's shoes. It's like there's a good, you go into this race thinking there's a very good chance this is my last time ever getting to drive. And as the race progresses, the writing's kind of on the wall. Pit, just leave it all out on the track and just say,
I'd want it. Yeah.
Yeah. I got P18, but there was a moment where no one was faster than me.
I literally put in the fastest lap on my last race ever. I'd do it.
Absolutely.
So as we move towards the end of wrapping this up,
Yeah.
so we have like a whole month between now and the next race.
Okay.
So we're gonna have more episodes where we actually can do more strategy. I want to run some more statistics and figure
Sure.
out what the last push is, going the last few races. What are you feeling as far as changes to make to your team?
So still very much in the new guy vein here. I have a question.
Yeah.
There's I think 6 races left.
Mhm.
Are there any? Is there an endpoint on the upgrade packages that can roll out, or in your experience,
Mhm.
is this the point at which some constructors start to get a little more experimental in terms of we got to be thinking about next year?
Some constructors are already thinking about next year. I heard on F1.com that one of the teams, I forget which one it is. I want to say it might be like Haas. I don't know if that's true, but one of them have already are already moving on from the upgrades they're going to roll out next year and already are looking at the 2026.
Oh,
year.
wow.
So in my head, if you're not competing for the championship,
Mm-hmm.
you're done. You're already looking at next year to try and figure out what you can do to that car. You're already trying to put your money, because it's not necessarily about putting new parts on the car.
Yeah.
It's about where your budget's going, because the cost cap isn't for 1 year. It's like spread out over 3 years. So as soon as I put a couple $100 million into my car this year, I can't put that couple $100 million into my car next year or in R&D for the next year.
I see.
So as soon as like for example, Red Bull's bringing out new upgrades for the first time in a long time this coming race, because they want to try and win.
Right, but it also feels much more like a late breaking effort to catch up to the pack now.
Yeah.
And hold on to that driver's championship.
Completely agree.
Okay, cool.
So they're going to do that. Was Kick Sauber, is Haas, is are those other teams, is Alpine going to be bringing out? No, I doubt it. Maybe they are. I'm not, behind it, but no, like we're far enough to the end. If a team feels that their die is cast, they're looking at next year.
Yeah, because I mean, as much as fantasy Formula One makes you care about every team,
yeah,
I think in the past 6 months, I can count on one hand the number of times we've had a substantive conversation about teams like Kick Sauber or Alpine.
Yeah, it's those have always been, how much are they going to cost you? How much?
Correct.
How much are you risking by putting them on? Not how many points can they actually get you?
Right.
Oh,
that was the other guy who's on Haas next year, Ocon.
There we go.
There it is.
Thank you. Oh man. Okay, and it starts with the G.
Gasly.
No, I was talking about the former Haas team principal. Hang on. I'm just
Gunther Steiner.
There we go.
Yes,
Gunther.
yes.
There we go.
Yeah. No, you were right. All we needed was that first letter.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's 6. We have about a month, and so that means there's room for rampant, irresponsible speculation.
Absolutely.
This is what I see. This is what I see happening. I think we're gonna say goodbye to Kevin Magnussen at the end of this season, as far as driving for Formula One. Haas is all set with Behrman and Ocon, which I don't have a lot of faith in Ocon, but
yeah, I mean, it's got to change things up, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe new constructor, new management.
But now, and we know we've got Hulkenberg on Kick Sauber Audi, so I think we're going to be saying goodbye to Zhou Yu. I think we're saying goodbye to Valtteri Bottas. I think he could be a reserve driver maybe somewhere. I like the guy, but he's also at the bottom of the driver and constructor points total.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has enough personality that he might pull a Danny Rick, be willing to go third driver somewhere, have his mullet.
Sure, no, I love the I love the guy. And again, he's got some Grand Prix wins in his career.
He beat me in a straight up race, but yeah.
But so what I think is, again, the weird prediction here is we're gonna see Perez on Audi, or Alpine next year.
Okay.
At this point, I think Liam Lawson is going to be our other baby RB. I think Yuki Tsunoda's staying right where he is. I know we've dabbled with the idea of Yuki being the other Red Bull driver. Which at this point he's getting better. I mean
here's the reason why I think he might be the next Red Bull driver.
Okay.
It used to be that baby RB, now V carb. They used to pretend that it wasn't closely related to Red Bull.
Sure. I mean, they used to be what, AlphaTauri?
AlphaTauri, that was it. They used to pretend like they weren't Baby RB. And then they became Baby RB. And then they're like, okay, now we're VCARB because Visa Cash App Red Bull is paying a whole bunch of money.
Right.
Visa Cash App's paying major bonk, and we don't even talk about it. If they are no longer a feeder team to Red Bull, if they are a feeder team, then they can't keep Yuki Tsunoda there because he's not new anymore. He's been there for several years. So if it's still a feeder team, then he needs to move on and move up to Red Bull, or they need to make room for somebody else.
I agree.
If it's no longer a feeder team, if they're their own team, well then great. They need to start thinking that way. And do they want to keep him? Sure. Then they need to quit talking about moving drivers from VCARB to Red Bull.
You're absolutely right, because
they're doing both right
it's
now.
either a developmental team or it's not. No, you're spot on. So if it is Max Verstappen, Yuki Tsunoda,
I think he could do great. I think he's got enough attitude. I think he's
calmed down enough.
He's calm now. He's got his attitude, but he's calm. He's a little bit more mature. And guess what? Put him in the Red Bull. He can't do worse than Sergio Perez.
No, unless
he crashes, he can't do worse than Sergio Perez.
You're absolutely right, and I think this coming season of Drive to Survive will be very interesting on that front to see.
Yeah.
Well, what are the dynamics in that car as he's been racing? Because if you watch those earlier the two previous seasons, he gets a little fired up. He gets a little bit. I mean, fired up is not a bad thing. But he seems stressed. Though
I see what you mean.
Earlier on,
that's a good point. Yeah, he'll have glimmers of just straight tranquility.
Yeah,
but otherwise he just really blows his top.
He seems very much like you can't say one more thing to him or he's going to lose whatever he's got going for him.
Yeah,
but this year has been very apart from that. So I'd like that for Red Bull. The AlphaTauri, Baby RB, VCARB, call them what you will. What I want to see is Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto, because there's no room for Franco on Williams next year because they've got Sainz and they've got Albon.
That's true.
But Franco's getting points,
dude.
In a second half of the season. Williams, again, first half of the season was rough. They were having vehicle and part availability was an issue. So again, Logan Sargent, we love you, man. It was just bad timing.
Man, it happened.
You're going to do great things. We believe in you, but.
Go in Le Mans somewhere,
correct.
Yeah, but dude, I never thought of that. I would love that.
That'd be rad.
Love that. That would be so good. Next, that'd be good. Colapinto and Lawson on VCARB.
Or does Mercedes maybe snatch up Colapinto?
I think he's done well enough the first couple races.
Yeah.
I think somebody should get him. I think.
For sure.
Yeah, because as soon as he's coming in off the bench, all year, VCARB has been struggling to get into the top 10. Mm-hmm. This guy comes not even off the bench.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I completely blanked out. There's that 17-year-old kid like Antonelli or something like that.
Yeah, he's waiting in the wings.
And Mercedes has been hot on him for a while. So. Yeah. They were talking about even changing regulations to allow him to drive at age 17. I don't think it happened, but he's gotten some free practice stuff. So I think he's the heir apparent to the opening up seat there.
But it's still the same as that whoever does get him, if he does go to, you said Mercedes, right?
Yes.
If he does go to Mercedes, well then they're just grooming him to be the next Max Verstappen, right?
Sure.
They're having him fly number 2 to give Russell his shot.
Yeah. Which at this season he's earned.
He's earned his shot. He's earned to be the lead driver, and with Antonelli, being his hot number 2, if Russell doesn't perform next year, and Antonelli does, well then that doesn't bode well for Russell.
Sure.
It's a way to kind of keep things pushing, not have things
absolutely.
Be
so exciting things coming up. It's fun.
Can't wait, and I can't wait to see. I really hope they change with the fantasy aspect of it, because this year no drivers changed, so nobody really reset value. I'm looking forward to having next year there be new drivers,
a little bit of fresh blood,
fresh blood, and let the numbers kind of reset, because McLaren's going to be out budgeted next year. You're not going to be able to get both McLaren and a constructor. You're not going to be able to get one McLaren and one constructor. I don't think.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think they're going to let both McLaren guys and the constructors all come in for $26 million each.
What excites me, though, is that you can. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a repeat of if you have Max and you have Red Bull, you're all set, and then it's all about the nuance from there. I think you could. Oh, are we recording?
No, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
we had a moment.
We had a moment. Yeah, I was like, wait a second, I don't see the little line jump, but the numbers are ticking, so we're good.
Cool. I know last year and in previous years, Sergio Perez was a reliable number 2.
Yeah.
But I think next year, yes, Norris is the heir apparent to the, the top dog status. But if you can afford McLaren and you can afford Piastri,
Ooh.
I think you've got enough to work with where he's gonna bring in enough points to make it sexy, and then there's enough talent at a lower or mid tier range that you can get creative, especially early, in those first 6 to 10 weeks of the season.
And that not to make next year plans too fast, but that's one thing I have learned this year is it is very important to
lock down the talent
while
they're cheap.
Keep it.
Yeah.
Because right now, like as soon as we had gotten those people out there who did say, McLaren's going to figure it out. They just need a quarter season. Mm-hmm. People like me, my mentality was no. You got to transfer to them as they start to climb.
Yep.
These guys bought into them when they were losing, value every race. Bought in, and then when they made the jump.
And that's the problem with this game is at this point in the season, the teams that are beating you can't afford to switch to. These are people who saw the writing on the wall early, had the patience to say, okay, this guy had a bad week. However, he is still the guy, and stuck with him. And
yes, there are other people who are sitting here with Haas as their constructor still going, I saw that glimmer of hope. Some point they'll come out. Haas will do great things.
Right.
And it is not happening.
It's not going to happen.
So, man, I love it. And we'll have more episodes before the racing kicks back off.
Oh, for sure.
To discuss new deep dives and whatnot. That's made it through my list. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I am spent. If you're sticking with us, thank you. We love you. Leave comments. We will respond because we've got the bandwidth for it.
Yep.
And leave us a 5-star review. That'll help us out.
All right. Cheers.
Take care.